Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks. I truly hope you've all had a lovely time over Christmas in the last couple of days. I did. Wonderful time. However you spent it, hopefully you guys had a little bit of a chance to relax. I definitely did, but I also was sitting there twiddling my thumbs thinking, gosh, I can't wait to get back into making content. I've been really enjoying making daily videos so far this month of December, and I can plan to do so at least for the rest of this year for the next few days. You guys have been responding so well. I think I've got more new subscribers this month than I've ever had so far on the channel in a single month, and more views as well. So if you're one of the new subs or a new viewer, thank you so much for tuning in today. So today's video is going to be for all of those of you that want me to play less popular vehicles. I noticed that recently, with the advent calendar is that a lot of my videos were focused on the premium tanks. It just made sense to me to cover those tanks while they're of interest to you. A lot of people, especially on my live stream, are constantly asking me, is this tank worth it? What's this tank about? And so by doing those videos, I kind of managed to kill two birds with one stone, if that makes sense. Bit of a poor analogy. But I must apologize if a lot of you out there who have no intention of playing those premium vehicles felt that my content was a bit more heavily towards the what is available in premium. And that's just because that's what the advent calendar was really about. Hopefully you still found the reviews useful, if only to figure out the weaknesses of those tanks. And so today I'm going to be focusing on the VK4502A. And also, after this, the Tier 8 British heavy tank, the Caernarvon. Now, what is the linking factor between these two vehicles, you might ask? Well, both of them I feel are kind of underestimated. Both of them I also think are very poorly played and not given enough attention to what the attention they deserve. And also, they're both vehicles that I feel kind of don't truly know who they are. They kind of got this split personality thing going on. Are they a medium tank? Are they a heavy tank? Both of those vehicles have got towards the topping class mobility if you take out, for example, the AMX 5100, and that's a whole different ball game, isn't it, when you think about split personalities and vehicles and design. The French magazine autoloader design is a completely different ball game that we're not going to be talking about here. So the VK4502 and also the Caernarvon are both very fast tanks. As we can see here, they've got a lot of horsepower to ton ratio, and they also have pretty darn good ground resistance as well, especially for heavy tanks, and this allows them to shift, allows them to get around. Now both of those tanks, some of the aspects of their guns are not as strong as what you would have on a stereotypical heavy tank, such as this Tiger II that we're looking here. This is what I would call the heavy German Tier 8 tank, whereas the one that I'm playing is more about the one that has a little bit of more mobility, and it has to outplay its opponents, not by just using its armor, and probably also its gun capabilities. Wow, we hit that guy so hard that we just broke XPM and the hit log in the top left-hand corner of the screen. That's a little weird. Hopefully shutting him down will fix it. Not quite yet, maybe. Oh, there we go. It seems to be back. Well, not quite. Anyway, let's not focus on that. So, I'm talking about using the mobility in these vehicles, because obviously if you don't have the same kind of gun that a Tiger II has, and you don't have the armor that a Tiger II has, you have to use other aspects of the vehicle. And for this, it's a pretty darn good DPM. It's also got a very nice aim time of 2.3 seconds with its 105mm gun, which is, apart from the Caernarvon, I believe, best in class. Because that means that we can quickly aim, we can move between our shots, and we've still got the alpha damage to be able to hit hard where it matters. Already picking up 5 kills this game. Really, the worst thing that a lot of players do in the VK4502A is try and play it like it's a heavy. You need to brawl a little bit with it. It's a medium, you have to pressure your opponents, and you also have to have good knowledge of weak points. Talking about weak points, it looks like that Tiger II's lower plate is too much for the 200mm of penetration that this vehicle gets with its standard 105mm gun. So we've loaded an APCR round here, 244mm. That should be enough to challenge the Tiger II. All right, so I've got a choice here. I'm going to be going around a corner. There's an IS that I'm guaranteed to kill with a single shot. However, the Tiger II has 444 hit points. What is the correct target to kill? Well, definitely not the Tiger II. If you can secure a kill, you should secure a kill. Unless there's some reason why you shouldn't. Maybe because of a super high alpha damage on the gun. Like there's a Jagdpanzer 100 that you can put 2 quick shots in before he manages to reload and take him out, while the other tank isn't a threat. When it's an IS and a Tiger II, both of them have got very nasty guns that can challenge the frontal armor on this tank. And that's because the armor isn't the thickest, and it also doesn't have the angling that a lot of vehicles have, which makes it less effective. And so with the VK, you have to try and trade effectively, try and get the flanks of your opponents, avoid just turning it into that frontal slogfest that the Tiger II would love to have. So the penetration on this gun, I mean, it's 200 millimeters, and that really is one of the defining features of this vehicle. It does very well in a matchup like this, whereas I feel that the Tiger II, with its roughly 225 millimeters of penetration on that long 105 millimeter gun, is far more capable in a poor matchup. It looks like we're about to ram this Tier 6 Czechoslovakian medium tank to death, securing the 8th kill of the game. And from here, my team finish it off quickly by taking out the Lorraine 15550 in the field. So an excellent result for the VK4502A here. 8 kills is a great result in any tank. I was kind of surprised, but then when I realized this is Siegfried Line, and I was in a very nice matchup, and the stars did align for me, I didn't really do anything too fancy to be able to take this game down. It was just doing the basics right, such as waiting for the ambush shot into the T-34 here as he poked round the corner, following it up by tracking and executing this Jagdpanther 2, making sure I try my very best to avoid getting flanked by this T-25-2 here, and securing the kills on the right tanks with some good shot selection. The only part of this replay that I really didn't like, and I mentioned earlier on, is when I was kind of faffing around in this position. There was a huge amount of tanks here, and I was trying to squeeze shots into this Tiger II. Really didn't work out. And it's very easy to get yourself into situations like that in the VK4502A if you try and play it like it's a heavy tank. If you don't use the mobility, the aim time, and the slight rate of fire advantage that this tank has, then you might as well be playing something like a Tiger II. Anyway, let's go and take a look at another schizophrenic Tier 8 heavy tank, this time the Tier 8 British Caernarvon. And so I'm playing in the Caernarvon on Fjords. We're in quite a nice matchup here, but only a third of the enemy team are not the same tier. 2/3 of them are Tier 8, so this should be fairly balanced. I always like getting in these kind of games where everyone's roughly the same tier. Occasionally, of course, it does feel like there's a lot less variety in it as well. So the Caernarvon is a tank that just screams almost every aspect about it that it is totally confused, absolutely and utterly confused. The gun has the lowest alpha damage on any of the Tier 8 heavy tanks, 230 alpha damage with the 20-pounder that this vehicle gets. However, it has one of the best penetrations on any of the tanks, of about 226, I believe, yes, with its standard rounds. However, the vehicle's rate of fire is not very good either, which means that it has one of the lowest DPMs of any of the Tier 8 heavy tanks. Doesn't sound like great news so far, right? So how about its armor? Well, its turret's pretty darn good. And its upper plate is alright. I believe the upper plate on this tank is 130 millimeters. However, the lower plate is not very well angled, and it's quite an easy target for the enemy team. And here we go. This is a great example of the Caernarvon fighting it out with a Centurion above me. That Centurion is doing nothing but firing APCR rounds at me. Those APCR rounds that he's firing have got about 260 millimeters of penetration. But as we're side-scraping out, we're not actually taking any damage for him until finally a shot goes in through the turret ring, as you see here. Nice shot by him. He would have probably been able to penetrate my upper plate shooting down on it from that angle, thinking about it, but he was spent too much time just shooting at my side armor. And by side-scraping out here, we've kind of baited him to wasting a lot of shots and taken him down. Now you will have noticed that snapshot there, and that's something the Caernarvon does do very well. It has best-in-class aim time of 1.9 seconds, and until the recent buff to the Tiger II of its accuracy, it also had best-in-class accuracy of 0.32. And so that means that you can snapshot at tanks very well. You can also shoot on the move, and you can pinpoint weak points on the enemy tanks. Which means that if you've got fairly okay marksmanship skills in the Caernarvon, you're going to be very reliable. However, our shell seems to go just slightly too high there, going onto that upper plate of the T-34. Want to put some pressure here on the T-34. The OHO slams down that IS-3 in front, and then we get to begin to use the rate of fire. Well, we would use the rate of fire if that fat Japanese tank wasn't just sitting in front of us. But it looks like he's doing fairly okay. Oh, well, not anymore, as the T-34 nearly manages to take him out. But I know that I'm going to be able to reload and take out this T-34 before he can finish off the OHO. It doesn't look like the OHO needs my help, as he does the job for himself. And so with the Caernarvon, one of the most important things you can do with this tank is to make sure that you never, ever trade 1-for-1 with your opponent. I can't think of a tank that's tier 8 and higher that has this low alpha damage. It's got to be a medium tank, and even some of the medium tanks have got more alpha damage than 230. And so that means that if you get shot in the Caernarvon, you bloody well better put 2 shots into your opponent, otherwise you're not going to do very well in this tank at all. So you need to try and dictate the pace of the combat. And when you've got the 10 degrees of gun depression that this vehicle gets, as well as the aim time, then you do pretty good. Now the Super Pershing might have that big fat shield on front of it. But when you've got a gigantic British slug of a tank going down a slope, you're going to come slightly better off. Although not massively when we think about it. We did 121 to him and we took 35 damage from him. Maybe that was a useless ram, considering that we would have had to have shot him twice anyway. But then again, we might have low-rolled, and that ramming damage might have been the difference between taking another hit from the Super Pershing and not. One thing that you can really usually depend on in the Caernarvon is its turret armor. This turret is very nice. And one thing that I just realized is that this replay is from 9.10, and that the Caernarvon doesn't actually get this turret anymore. It gets the Centurion Action 10 turret now, which is also a very nice turret, especially when you use the 10 degrees of gun depression. That turret can do very well indeed. I'm wondering if the new turret is better than the old turret on the Caernarvon. That's something that you'll probably have to take a look at my tank review on the Centurion Action 10 and my tank review on the old Caernarvon, turret that is, to grasp. Luckily for us, that Borsig misses, and when he misses, I know I can shoot him again before he manages to reload. I decided that I haven't even bothered to repair my my turret. It's been broken for a while now. I just haven't really felt like I've needed it. The Caernarvon is one of those tanks that does lose its ammo rack repeatedly in a battle. Although we haven't so far here, but only 1 shot has managed to penetrate our tank out of the 7 that's hit us. So I was keeping my large repair kit, just in case we lost our ammo rack, to be able to repair both. Now, this AMX CDC is also firing APCR at us. The first one bounces, the second one goes into my track, and I decide I want to repair my track and my turret to pursue him round the corner and not allow him to escape. That means that we can finish him off. A great result there. That was such effective trading for the Caernarvon. We managed to put, was that 4 shots into him? 4 shots into that guy, and this is a cool moment. Cool guys don't look at fires, right? As we burn the enemy Hummel to death. But yes, we hit the AMX CDC 4 times, and he shot us, I believe, 3 or 4 times there as well, only managing to penetrate our tank once, as we can see, even though he was slinging all the APCR rounds at us. Oh well. What a result so far for the Caernarvon in a game that's only lasted 6.5 minutes. 4 kills, 4,000 damage, just a very solid result. And why did that happen? Because we played this tank against everything. It kind of fought all comers. I don't think necessarily that this vehicle needs to be played so much like a medium, like the VK4502A does. I think if you try and play the VK4502A purely like a heavy, you're going to do a lot worse than if you try and play the Caernarvon like a heavy, because of the upper plate armor that's quite well angled. If you can hide the lower plate, you're going to do quite well. And also because the turret armor, at least was, very decent, and I'm pretty sure is still very good with the Centurion Action 10 turret. Still, we're able to get where we needed to go with the fairly good mobility of the Caernarvon, and when we got there, used this kind of medium tank weapon to be able to outtrade a lot of heavies and pick apart mediums, while still surprising them with some darn good effective use of our armor, even though pretty much all the rounds that hit us had about 260 millimeters of penetration. And I just really can't put my finger what is it about the Caernarvon that seems to make it perform so well, at least for me? In theory, it's got one of the lowest DPMs and the lowest alpha damage of any of the tier 8 heavy tanks. Its mobility isn't incredible, and its armor does have some pretty darn big weak points, as well as a very vulnerable ammo rack. Nevertheless, it just keeps plodding along, and I think I have to attribute that to the excellent dispersion values and aim time of this vehicle, as well as the decent penetration on the gun. It just feels like it keeps chugging along, and it's so dependable, especially when you get yourself on a ridgeline. So what can we draw from the game that we had in the VK4502A? Well, we got lucky with finishing off kills, but we also got a high caliber medal at the same time, securing over double what anyone else apart from the Centurion was able to achieve on our team with regards to damage. We only missed 2 shots this game, but considering all of the fighting was in close quarters, wouldn't expect anything less. This tank is not the most accurate, while its aim time is a fantastic 2.3 seconds. Armor-wise, we kind of side-scraped very well. Fair enough, we were top tier, but that still allowed us to block over 1,000 damage, and still allowed us to be quite aggressive at the end. And that's one of the best things about still having half of your hit points in the mid to late game, is that you can just trade so much more effectively and put pressure on your opponents, often finding vehicles that are wounded and being able to put a couple of shots into them for maybe either bouncing a shot or taking a hit. When your hit points get low towards the end of the game and you're perhaps a one shot for the enemy team, it makes it a much more tricky affair to be able to pick up damage. Often players will be more aggressive against you, often players will try and target you. That kind of confidence that they can get from knowing that they can take you out with a single shot is many times the difference between a good game and a great game, and it's something that I do badly. I'm a very aggressive player, and quite often I will lose a lot of my hit points early on in the battle. And I think if I played a little bit tighter in some of my rounds, I would probably do better, and that's something I'm going to try and work on in the new year especially. Credits-wise, we managed to nail 27,000 credits profit. Great result. And this was an ace tanker, although this replay website doesn't show it, in just over 6.5 minutes. For our Caernarvon game, it was an ace tanker as well, this time a huge amount more experience. Was this for a triple? No, it wasn't. Wow, 4,642 for our double. That's great for a tier 8 tank. And this time we didn't even get a Top Gun, let alone a Radley Walters medal that we got in the VK4502A, securing a high caliber and a steel wall. Let's see how good that steel wall was. Wow, great, 2,220 damage blocked. And I had the vast majority of my hit points intact at the end of the game, irrelevant of the fact that the enemies were predominantly firing APCR rounds at my vehicle, and very good APCR rounds as well, with about 260 pen. I just think that the Centurion on the enemy team couldn't really handle my side scraping, bouncing every single shot that he fired apart from that one that went through our turret ring. And it doesn't look like that AMX did any better against me as well towards the end. This time the combat was at a slightly longer range, but we still hit a good amount of shots. 21 out of 24 and 19 of those penetrated. I wouldn't expect anything less from such an accurate tank with a very low aim time, best in class aim time, and a good penetration of 226. The difference between the 200mm of penetration the VK4502A gets and the 226 the Caernarvon gets is massive. That's the difference between a T32 and an IS-3. And in a game situation, that's quite often the difference between comfortably getting through the front of, say, a Tiger 2 or an IS-3, or bouncing off their lower plate when you either get a low penetration roll or just hit it at a bad angle. And with the cheap ammunition that this vehicle gets, we made 53,000 credits profit. Great result there. I have no idea if I fired any premium rounds in that game. I know I fired a couple in the VK4502A just to secure the lower plate of that Tiger 2. And what's interesting about these tanks is that they really don't play like the next step up. The VK4502 Alf's B is an absolute monster with regards to its armor. It has probably one of the best hull armors in the game, let alone just at tier 9. You angle that armor and don't overexpose your side armor, you're going to be able to bounce everything. But you lose all of the mobility that the VK4502 Ausführung A had. And with regards to the Caernarvon, when you get that 120mm absolute monster of a gun on the Conqueror, it just makes the tank feel like a real heavy, a lot like an M103, rather than the kind of medium slug that the Caernarvon is. And so, one of my recommendations to you, if you're going for either of these tanks, or sometimes other vehicles, don't get too hung up if a certain tank along the tree is not the kind of playstyle that you were hoping it would be, or what you feel would lead on to the next tank that might be your goal. Furthermore, if you try and think out of the box and accept that a tank line doesn't need to be played in a similar fashion all the way up, then it's probably going to make the game a much more enjoyable experience, as well as a faster grind for you, because obviously the more damage you do, the more kills you get, the more experience you're going to get, and you're going to be able to reach those higher tier tanks faster. And then maybe you'll enjoy even the tanks with split personalities. And so hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please do consider giving it a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And if this video has left you wanting more on the VK4502A or the Caernarvon, then simply click through up here, or better still, use that more info icon in the top right hand corner of your screen to be presented by a plethora of relevant replays. And let me know in the comments down below what you think about the VK4502A and the Caernarvon. Do you feel like they're completely underrated tanks? Do you think that they're competitive within their tier? And also, are there any tanks that you think are a bit like the VK4502A or the Caernarvon that don't really behave in a stereotypical fashion, at least with regards to the tanks of equal tier and tank type? And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.